Hey guys, this is Mr. Nightmare here, and I'm sorry for the late updation. Normally, I would post a video on Monday around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but due to a lot of things been going on, I've completely forgot to post the latest video of Jeff the Killer Don't Go to Sleep, Chapter 12. Before we get started, please hit that like button, comment, subscribe to this channel if you guys want more creepypasta fanfictions out there. Until then, let's get started. My future, which may never see. Everything was over, or was it? I find myself in my mind, clear, rid of the past 10 years. It was finally calm and peace. Then I heard a familiar voice greeting me. I turned around and looked. It was Jeff standing no more than a couple feet away from me. I can feel my heart racing 1,000 beats per minute. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I flood over with emotions that it took a good moment for me to speak. "Jeff," I muttered and reached for his hand with a smile on my face. "It's time to go. I have something to tell you," he said. My tears were like waterfalls running down my face, making my eyes slightly red and my cheeks as well. I gave Jeff a big smile and rushed over to him in an embrace. He wrapped his arms around me. "I love you," I confessed. Just before everything turns white, his grip got tighter and leaned into me and whispered in my ear. The white space I was all I can see and hear. "I love you too," he answered. It echoed through my mind until I started to regain consciousness. I felt all the senses returning to my body. I slightly got hot and sore in my stomach. I could no longer see the white, but black. I started to hear voices. One of them being Jeff. I started to groan as my eyes opened. "Alex," Jeff called out I can hear my name being called. My eyes opened. The first thing I could see was the wooden ceiling. I turned my head to the right to see Jeff sitting in the chair holding my hand. His hoodie was covered in blood, and so were his ears. He looked like relieved and a hint of worry on his face. It was curtains relaxing, but I couldn't fall back to sleep right now. I started to shift my body again and lift my head up, only to see Ben hovering with a glowing green orb towards my stomach, the very spot that was sore. I was confused, but I began to realize the orb was slowly taking away the pain away. Ben was healing me. Why? What happened? I lifted up a little bit more, but then Jeff stopped me. "Hang on there. You need rest," he said. "What happened?" I asked Jeff. He sighed and seemed to clear that he did not want to answer, but he had no choice. I was completely clueless in what happened when Mind Freak took over. Jeff was about to speak when Ben jumped in. "I had to use a blade and stab your body to extract Mind Freak. It was pretty deep, but with the healing spell, you should be back to normal," Ben explained. Jeff looked over to Ben in confusion, but understood why he stepped in and said what he did. So it made it seem like Jeff didn't want to break his promise to me. It wasn't hard to see that Jeff did this, but it was for a good reason. So I didn't see a big deal, and I just let it go. "I see. Where is she now?" The last time I saw her, she was cackling and turning into dust, I explained to Ben. "She was tucked away inside the blade. It's heavily spelled on, so she is not going anywhere anytime soon," Ben assured me. Jeff began to look anxious as he realized that Sally and the others may not be able to occupy Slenderman for so much longer. "Ben, how much longer Slendy will be here Then Jeff was interrupted when a tall, pale faceless creature came through the door. He looked displeased and slightly angry. I started to hear the other's footsteps approaching behind him. Suddenly a little girl appeared out of nowhere and clung to Jeff, started weeping. "Jeff, I'm sorry, but we did our best," she cried. He sighed and patted the back of the little girl's head and said, There. A moment. "It's okay. I will deal with him. Ben, keep Alex safe," Jeff said, and he stood up towards the faceless creature. I was a little worried and confused. What was going on? Why was this happening? Was he going to kill Jeff? With the last question in my mind, and I saw the tall man make a first appearance and suddenly swung up from the bed, standing between them, my arms spread across to protect Jeff. But both Jeff and the tall man were shocked and slightly confused. "Human, what is going on?" the man explained. My face slightly shook in anger, and I gave him the most coldest stare I could give him. It sent chills down everyone's spine. "I'm not going to let you hurt Jeff." My voice raised. Jeff placed a hand on my shoulder, letting me know to back down. "Don't worry, Alex. Lindy won't hurt me. He is not the one that hurts his own members," Jeff assured me. I lowered my arms. I slowly grabbed Jeff's upper arm and he pulled me behind him. It hurt a little, but he simply was just protecting me. "Jeffrey, please explain to me where this whole mess that you made. What happened to Mind Freak?" Slenderman demanded, or Slendy. Clearly, he was angry for some reason. It was enough to frighten me. Jeff gave a cold glare and sighed and began to explain everything that happened from the beginning. From Mind Freak being a backstabber, unfaithful, manipulative little bitch, the night he met me, and Ben's plans to save me. Bandy was clearly not happy with the whole situation, but looked back at Jeff understandingly. "I see. Where is she now?" Just then, as Slenderman finished asking the question, the blade started slowly twitching and conversing. Slenderman stood up and picked up the blade. He looked in it. In the reflection of the blade, and find Mind Freak looking back at him, sad and relieved to see him. "Oh, Slendy, please help me. They took me from my hose. From me after I clearly did nothing wrong. Please help me," she begged and cried. But he gave her a cold glare, not showing that he did not believe her. "You heard everything, didn't you? If you please tell me the truth." He sounded so upset. "But the truth, now." Slendy raised his voice in anger. Also, one of his tentacles appeared from his back, waving around like a shockwave underwater. He was clearly enraged. Mind Freak had a look of shock, but then she smirked and started giggling. "Everything that Jeff said is true, and I did all of those horrible things. I did kill Smile Dog, and I did betray you. Face it, you're not much to look at, and I mean literally. I just wanted power. Other gangs so I could have an army to get my revenge, to destroy the human family." I and Jeff were shocked. What did my family have to do with her pain and suffering? "I think we have heard enough," Slendy said, as he started putting down the blade. "Don't you turn your back on me. You know the truth, Slendy. Tell her about her family." He took the blade and placed it in a box under a magical lock and key. The noise of her yelling stopped when Slendy sighed in relief. I was confused about what Mind Freak said. Why does she want me and my family gone? What history? I stood up and walked over to Slenderman. "Excuse me, what does she mean about the truth of my family?" I asked him politely. He turned his face towards me and gave me a nervous look. He definitely knew something about my family's past, why Mind Freak was so bent on wiping them out, including myself. Please have a seat. I will explain everything, he said in a calm tone. I and Jeff grabbed a chair and sat across from Slenderman, and he began explaining my family history. With Mind Freak, my great-grandfather was a scientist. He studied strange topics of anomalies. He managed to track down a woman named Susan who was possessed by mind-reading abilities. My great-grandfather and his team studied her for months, until one night she was raped by my great-grandfather. Susan became pregnant and died in childbirth. That child was Mind Freak, or her real name was Cassie. The child has same abilities as her mother, but it seemed to develop into mind movement. The team performed a lot of brutal experiments on her to the point her skin turned gray, and then they shaved her head, and her hair grew back, turning purple. After 15 years of brutal experimentation, she finally snapped and destroyed the lab, killing my great-grandfather and his team along with it. She allowed my great-grandfather to get away, but she knew she couldn't be free unless he was gone too. After 3 years of searching, she found him, but when she learned that he had a new family, already had a child, she couldn't allow them to fall into the same cycle that her father had taken. One night, she went into their home and murdered him and his wife. Mind Freak was about to kill the child, but that's when Slenderman showed and brought her back to the manor. She was a troubled soul. That's why I took special care of her. Slenderman finished the story. I was shocked that I was related to a real monster and finally understanding of why she was so evil herself. I started to feel pity for Mind Freak. Why don't you keep her under control? Did you even see how many lives she fucked up? Jeff sounded a bit upset, but sounded to speak of anger in his tone. Slenderman hesitated for a moment. He was lost for words. The things become different. The more time we spent together, the more I got to know her. I started developing feelings, he explained. That is not a fucking excuse. Jeff shot up from his seat, ready to sound angry at the time. I stared a little worried, but Slenderman just sat there. He knew the errors of his ways. I know, and I should have paid more attention. It was indeed my fault, he admitted to being wrong, and Jeff was surprised. Well, the great and powerful Slenderman actually admitted his faults. Don't play shit. I know you're trying to calm me down because I know what's going to happen to Alex. If you're really sorry, let her live, Jeff demanded. Slenderman stood up and put his chair back against the wall and turned his back towards Jeff. How about we strike a deal? I'll let her live, only under 2 conditions. 1, she must remain here forever. And 2, her memories of you and this place shall be erased. What? Both me and Jeff were in utter shock and disbelief. You can't do that. I mean, I don't mind staying here forever, making up for the years I left, but Slindy, you must understand that I need her, Jeff admitted. I am breaking one of the most sacred rules in letting her live here with you. You're going to question my decision? Slenderman yelled back at Jeff as they started to get mad at one another. I stood up and stood between them once again. Calm down, you two. Listen, I'll accept your deal, Mr. Slenderman, I shouted at him. Jeff froze for a moment and was lost for words. But Alex... My hands were on his chest and I could tell Jeff's heart was beating so fast. Jeff, I understand you're upset. If he was failing to break a very rule that keeps you guys safe, I will not argue. I won't ever see you again. The worst of all, you won't even remember me. That's the worst fate than death. Well, nothing that I say that. Jeff trailed off for a second and turned his attention back to you. If it means to keep everyone in this place safe, I'm willing to sacrifice my memories to do so. I held Jeff's hands and looked at him in the eyes with love and passion. Jeff understandably was upset by all this. He tilted his head down in sadness. Ben walked in and placed his hand on Jeff's shoulder. It'll be all right, I promise. Shut up, Jeff muttered, and Ben took his hand off his shoulder and then walked over to Slenderman. Sir, if you should allow them to have at least an hour together before they part. Ben insisted, and Slenderman looked at the both of them. He could see the sadness in mine and Jeff's eyes. He sighed and decided to allow it. Very well. Jeff and Alex, I will allow you both to spend 1 hour together. After that, Ben will perform the memory spell. Do you understand? Jeff was silent for a moment. Not an hour he wanted. He wanted forever, but he knew it was better than nothing. Jeff started to realize that too. Okay, he muttered. Good. I shall close the door behind me. Ben, let them be alone. Ben soon followed Slenderman out the door, leaving me and Jeff behind. He still looked upset. Jeff. I wonder if he would look at me. His head was still down, but then, out of nowhere, arms wrapped around me and pulled me in for a kiss. I could feel the intense passion and lust in the kiss. Then he slowly pushed me towards the wall. Once my back hit the wall, his lips let go. I was breathing very heavily. Jeff, what has gotten into you? I questioned him. We only have an hour, so I don't want to waste any time. He smirked. I smirked back at him, realizing what he meant. Well, better get to work. You're right. Both our lips locked again and got to show each other how much we meant for each other. An hour was almost up, but I was barely moving at this point. Jeff, hard work. I cuddled up closer to him. I'm going to miss you, he said weakly as he kissed my forehead. Me too, I said sadly. You're my first, and I don't think I'll ever remember it. You may not be ever to remember it mentally, but your body will always feel it. Jeff assured me. I smiled up at him, and then I heard the door on the other side. Alex, Jeff, it's time. His voice was muted from the door. I and Jeff looked at each other with sadness. After getting dressed, we both went into the hallway and Ben's room, where Slenderman and Ben were waiting. Any final words would you like to say, Jeff? Slenderman asked me. I looked at him. I had a lot to say. So much. But it was going to be harder to parting ways. Stay strong, Jeff. Thank you for being there for me. I smiled at him. My hands slowly started to pull apart, and my heart was racing. No problem. Thank you for everything, for taking care of yourself. And please take care of yourself, Jeff said as I started to enter the room. We both stood on the opposite sides. All I could do was look at the other with pure despair as the door shut. My eyes started to fill up with tears as I began to cry. Ben walked over to me and hugged me. It'll be all right, I promise. I sobbed into Ben's shoulder. How? He was the only one I ever loved, I cried. Do you want to know how? Ben whispered. Into my ear. On the other side, Jeff could hear the spell being performed. His eyes were burning with tears falling down his cheeks. I fucking hate you, he muttered to Slenderman. It'll be all right, Jeffrey. You will forget about her. Then Jeff lost his temper and tackled Slenderman to the ground, wrapping his arms around the throat. I will never forget her, you hear me? Not until the day I die. Not until I will never stop loving her. She is the only person in the fucking world that actually gives a shit about me. And now you just took her away from me. Jeff shouted and he sobbed, his grip loosening slowly, as he began to cry and sob on top of Slenderman. Jeff slowly got up and as he heard the door open, to see me passed out in Ben's arms. The spell is complete, Ben announced as he walked out with me in his arms. Jeff could feel nothing but despair. Well done, Ben. Take her home. And Jeff, you will remain here. Your outbursts have cost you. Whatever, he muttered as they took me home. With my memories erased and all, how on earth did you remember all this and to tell the story? About me and Jeff? Well, it just happened about that deal I made with Ben. And that is the end of my story. Or is it? Hey, you made it to the end of the video. I'm glad. If you want more Ben Drowned love stories, check out the playlist that will be popping up soon. Also, if you want any more fanfictions narrations, please check out my other channel, Reading with Blade, which has multiple fanfictions up already. If you are interested in the yaoi experience, check out Tyler O'Connell's channel if you want to go there. But note that channel is only 18 and up. I've been listening to Tyler's stories and I'm addicted to them. Until then, bye guys!